Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? ESPN today released what they called they said it was simulating NFL quarterback offseason changes, trades, signings, draft picks. On Tuesday, Kat Terrell of ESPN.com was here, and she talked about this. She teased that this was coming. They got the NFL Nation reporters, the national NFL reporters, their front office people, their draft people, all together to try to simulate what would happen here in the offseason. Now, this was before the Tom Brady news. They did note, I just checked, that they have amended some of the pieces herein to account for Tom Brady not playing, because he was going to play somewhere, right? Presumably, even if he wasn't back in Tampa, was he going to go to the Jets? Was he going to go to the Raiders? Some of those things that were out there. Well, now we know definitively Tom Brady's off the board. So how does that affect other things? I'm not going to delay. I'll tell you what they predicted will happen for the Saints, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps how they got there. They do predict the Saints to re-sign Andy Dalton and draft Hendon Hooker. Okay? And I'll give you some reaction to that at the end, but let me just work through kind of some of the scenarios to answer some of the questions you probably had. So they started with Derek Carr. And, of course, Carr signed a 3-year, $121 million extension last year. Because of that huge contract, trading Derek Carr is tricky. Now, what they proposed for Carr, they said the Jets, the Saints, and the would offer trades for Derek Carr. The trade they proposed for Carr from the Saints was a 2023 third and fourth round pick. So this year's 3 and 4 for Derek Carr. Now, if I'm going to get my starting quarterback for the next half decade for a third and a fourth round pick, I'll take it. If I know Derek Carr is going to come to New Orleans and throw for 4,000 yards every year and make you a competitor, it gives you time with that. For a 3 and a 4, that's worth it, because it gives you time then to draft and develop someone behind him, etc. The problem is the contract. The Saints already have an enormous outsized cap number where they're $57 million over the cap. You're going to see a lot of cap casualties like we see every year. They got to get their cap back in line, and they're going to free up cap space, but you're not going to take on that contract. So Derek Carr becomes a non-starter. Ultimately, they talked about Ronnie Tannehill. The Saints wouldn't be in there. A lot of you ask about Lamar Jackson all the time. They project that the Ravens will franchise tag Lamar Jackson, which I fully expect will happen. Same with Daniel Jones. Giants kind of messed up. They did not sign Daniel Jones to his fifth-year option. Now they're going to have to overpay or pay over that fifth-year option on the exclusive franchise tag. So if you want to give another year sample size before you sign one of those guys to a long-term deal, you franchise them. That's what Washington did with Kirk Cousins before ultimately they sent him to Minnesota. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, they do mention Jimmy Garoppolo, Geno Smith, likely roster cuts, along with guys like Carson Wentz, Jameis Winston, Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, other guys that are likely to be cut because of their contracts and their situation. So, then they look at free agents, right? Because when I mentioned Derek Carr and Tannehill earlier, those are trade scenarios. They project Derek Carr ultimately would be cut. As I've said, that's likely. Remember, when you trade for a player, you're not just trading for the player, you're also trading for the contract. So the Raiders trading Derek Carr's contract is going to be very, very difficult. Because why would I give the Raiders assets for the right to pay Derek Carr a bad deal? You wouldn't. You'd let the Raiders cut Derek Carr. He's a free agent. You can sign him to whatever deal you want. Ultimately, they say that Carr ends up with the Jets, that he would sign there as a free agent. Geno Smith, they ultimately say that he re-signs with Seattle. Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, they do project the Saints to make an offer to Jimmy Garoppolo. 3 years, $66 million. That's the projected offer. But ultimately, they say Jimmy Garoppolo will accept an offer, a larger offer, to play in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Taylor Heineke, they project will re-sign with Washington. Jameis Winston, they're projecting to go to the Colts. And then they project Andy Dalton to re-sign with the New Orleans Saints. Likely a one-year deal similar to the deal he did this year. Now, this year was a one-year, $3 million deal. They're projecting a one-year, $10 million deal for Andy Dalton here. So if the Saints miss out on trade targets and free agents, the best scenario that they have really is maintain your continuity. You bring Andy Dalton back. Now, when I'm sitting here telling you that's the best option you have, that tells you how dire the Saints situation is. It's not going to be a desirable location for free agents, for your big-name free agents, because the Saints aren't a winning team right now, and they have a bit of a rebuild ahead and an awful cap situation, and they also don't have assets to go trade for one of the top players in free agency this year. So you're likely going to be looking toward a stopgap, i.e. Andy Dalton, and then the draft. They project Sam Darnold to be back in Carolina, Blaine Gabbert to be back in Tampa, Jacoby Brissett, who was with the Browns this year, likely to not have a deal, just sort of wait it out. And then they play through the draft. They have C.J. Stroud going to the Texans, Bryce Young going to the Colts, Will Levis going to the Panthers, Anthony Richardson going to the Bucs. And then the one that I teased a bit ago, they have Hendon Hooker going 40th overall to the New Orleans Saints with the Saints' second-round pick. By the way, let me read you the write-up here on Hooker. And this is courtesy of Kat Terrell. And then I'll react. She writes, this would be a great scenario for the Saints after failing to acquire a quarterback in free agency and missing out on top 4 passers in the draft class. The idea would be 35-year-old Andy Dalton is a bridge quarterback for 2023, and Hooker could either sit behind him or pushing for a starting job if he's ready. Of course, he's recovering from a torn ACL. She notes the Saints haven't developed a young quarterback in a long time, and being able to get a signal caller on a rookie contract would be ideal for their cap situation. I don't know, and I'm certain that over the next months, we are going to talk plenty about all of the quarterbacks available in this draft class. And it's been a long time, y'all, honestly, since we have really looked hard at quarterbacks in the draft. Because the Saints had Drew Brees, and there wasn't really any need to look at quarterbacks in the draft. Even if you wanted to take a flyer on someone, which the Saints did from time to time, took a flyer on Ian Book, took a flyer on Garrett Grayson. But the top guys in this year's draft class aren't going to be there, and maybe there's someone else that you favor or that the Saints organization will favor. You can look at anybody's draft rankings, and you'll see a lot of the same names. After the 4 that are the consensus first-rounders, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, you got Hendon Hooker, you got Tanner McKee from Stanford, Jaron Hall from BYU, Jake Haener from Fresno State, even guys that may be a little one-off, a Max Duggan, Clayton Tune from Houston, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, Aiden O'Connell from Purdue, Tanner Morgan from Minnesota. Names you know, guys who played really well in college. Adrian Martinez at Kansas State, Malik Cunningham at Louisville. You got a lot of names that are there, right? Stetson Bennett could be a mid-late round pick. God help us if the Saints pick Stetson Bennett. I don't know what. I'll be beside myself. But ultimately, the Saints are going to be in a position at either 29 or 40 to take who is likely the 5th best quarterback in the draft. The really interesting part is going to come when you look at the 2023 draft order, and with Tom Brady's retirement today, what does that mean for the Bucs? The Bucs now are very likely a team looking to draft a quarterback. And Tampa has the 19th pick in the draft. So what quarterback might be there for them? Again, the quarterback simulator we just looked at had them taking Anthony Richardson at 19. Is Anthony Richardson on the board at 19? I don't know. I mean, that's the lowest that I've seen him mocked. Now we'll see how the draft process plays out and what other teams are interested. What do the Chicago Bears do with Justin Fields? Do they decide that they're going to take a quarterback at 1 and trade Justin Fields? All of these are hypotheticals that we need to get the answer to that we won't know until the scenario plays out. But for the New Orleans Saints, there's a couple of realities. The division is going to be terrible. every team is going to have a quarterback issue, either with a stopgap, a bridge player, or grooming a rookie. And so if you're the Saints, you're looking and saying, well, are we in rebuild mode? Or do we push to win the division because somebody's got it? It might as well be us. It got much more interesting with the last 24 hours. Sean Payton going to Denver, giving the Saints draft capital in round 1. Tom Brady's retirement just pulls Tampa way back to the pack. Not that they were that far ahead, but yanks Tampa back to the pack. So it adds another layer of intrigue here to the offseason. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.